Well, hello and welcome to Circus History Live. I'm Bruce Hawley, president of the Circus Historical Society. Circus History Live is presented monthly by the CHS. This is our 31st episode of Circus History Live. Recordings of previous episodes are available on the Circus Historical Society YouTube channel. Our featured guest tonight is legendary ringmaster Johnathan Lee Iverson. And now, without further ado, here's the host of Circus History Live, Chris Berry, and Johnathan Lee Iverson.
Johnathan, I really want to thank you for joining us today. I think everybody on this call knows a little bit about Johnathan, but just as a way of background, Johnathan in his career, he performed before presidents. I mean, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton. He performed with some of the great singers of all times, Lou Rawls, Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder, Placido Domingo. And that was all before he was the age of 18. So, Johnathan, I mean, when you were 22 years old, you got tapped to be the first Black ringmaster, 22 years old. Tell us a little bit about how that all came about.
It was a happy, beautiful accident. First and foremost, I thank you all for really welcoming me onto this wonderful program. I love it. I love all the episodes. I watch as regularly as I can. And I love the fact that you're preserving the legacy of circus worldwide and the Great American Circus, of course, with the many personalities that you bring on. And I'm honored to be among them. My time with the greatest show on earth. Oh, there he is, a young kid.
Yeah, you see that kid there?
My time with the greatest show on earth really was just this beautiful happenstance, thanks to marvel of the director, Philip William McKinley, who was auditioning me actually for a dinner theater. And it so happened, unbeknownst to myself, he was also the director for Ringling Bros. And, it was one of those great showbiz stories of being in the right place at the right time. It's something that I insist upon when I talk to aspiring artists when they, go for auditions, to not necessarily focus so much on getting that part. Because believe it or not, and I learned this from one George Clooney, that the casting directors, they're all for you. They really are for you because you make their job easier if you're the one. But casting is a science. And the best part about it is you're always auditioning for multiple things, but you don't know that. And that was the case for me when it came to Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey. I had no idea. I was going for a little dinner theater. I was just trying to raise money so I could go to Europe and further my studies in opera. That's what I was going to do. And I went into that audition. I ended up being invited to perform with the Fireside Dinner Theater Christmas show, but that was all part of a plan by Philip William McKinley to grab hold of me, to keep me reserved for the great possibility of becoming ringmaster of the greatest show on earth. And of course, it all worked out. Well, I'm afraid I can't hear you.
Why don't we kind of, I'm sorry, I've got some technical problems on my end too, but why don't we kind of walk through that whole process of the audition process, what you sang, who you met with, how many meetings you had, where it happened?
Oh, it was great. So initially I went in for an audition at NOLA Studios in New York City. I was being auditioned by a gentleman by the name of Ed Flesh, who was the producer at the Fireside Dinner Theater Christmas show, along with Philip William McKinley, very hands-on director. And I auditioned for them, went into this little room, and I sang one of my favorite all-time songs. It's my go-to, Without a Song, by Vincent Youmans. And it's from the musical play A Great Day. And I sang that. From all accounts, I knocked it out of the park. It worked out. I was cast that day along with a lot of really talented individuals, including a gentleman who they also tapped to be ringmaster for the Blue show. I was going to be tapped for the Red show. And so, basically, Phil McKinley basically got a 2-for-1. And it was a rigorous process. You know, he was very straightforward with me. They called me that night. It felt like I was getting a secret call from the CIA. They said, listen, we're from Feld Entertainment. We own Ringling Brothers, Barnum Bailey, and we'd like to know if you would be interested in auditioning for Ringmaster. I thought, why not? It sounded like a great, I was 22 and single. I said, this will be a heck of a pickup line. So I said, yeah, sure. I was informed I was up against 30 others for the role. So it wasn't going to be like, you know, they were just going to hand it to me. The second part of that audition, so to speak, was a video audition for producer Kenneth Feld. So I went back to NOLA Studios. They recorded me, had me do the ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. And I had to sing another song. I believe what I sang for that audition was, they said, get something upbeat. So I sang, it was a selection from Porgy and Bess. It was the tune by the villain Sportin' Life. There's a train that's coming soon for New York. And so I sang that. And, Phil was very, I never met a director who was so lively. And I think in that audition, I kind of felt, okay, this is my gig, because he just seemed very insistent. So I did that audition, went to Wisconsin, Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, where the Fireside Dinner Theater was featured. I was doing that run. And midway through there, the legendary Tim Holst flew into town, and I was informed I'd have to audition for him so he could see, if I was what I guess Philip McKinley said I was. I didn't have a criminal record, So I went auditioned for the great Tim Holst, had a wonderful conversation with him. And by the end of that day, the job was mine, And of course, I told my family immediately, talked to my mother. And, like anybody, like most people, nobody knows what circus is. So my mother's own immediate reaction was, well, do you have to put your head in a lion's mouth or anything like that? It's like, I'm too paranoid to do anything like that. So I explained it to her. So it was, it was really a whirlwind. It was wonderful. And Tim whisked me away maybe a couple of weeks later to Chicago, Illinois, the Rosemont Center. I believe that's where it was. It was actually Rosemont Center, to see the Blue Unit. And I was supposed to see the great Jim Ragona. And unfortunately, that particular performance, Jim, I think he got sick, and I saw David Kaiser in his stead. And it was a lovely show. It was great. He was taking me around. I was getting to see how Tim worked. And it was great. It was interesting, and, a lot of people were sizing me up as, circus people do. And from there, it was like I was flying. It was a whirlwind. I always describe joining Ringling Brothers like they throw you in the deep end of the ocean and just go for it. And so that's how I felt for the first few months of that wonderful adventure. But I think I figured it out.
So when you, you kind of look back on that, what was your circus experience before that? I mean, you grew up in New York City, right? Did you ever get over to the Garden to see the show?
Well, absolutely. My circus experience was, the nominal fan. New York City, it just was a part of my life. It was just something I did. And anytime I got to go to Madison Square Garden was like a major event. I remember seeing Andre the Giant in WWF wrestling. I mean, that was the biggest, greatest thing in my life. I saw the late, great Michael Jackson in his Bad tour there. I was in the fourth row. I just spent the whole show like just stunned. And of course, I would see the Ringling Brothers shows. I remember actually—
There you are, probably when you used to go and see those shows, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, absolutely. I had hair and everything. I saw the Living Unicorn tour. And for years, I carried a chip on my shoulder because I was, I was like, man, I'm waiting for this big old horse and the unicorn. That's what I'm thinking. And I thought, man, I'm not at the time when I got older, I thought, boy, what a beautiful piece of marketing. Because it was a unicorn. They didn't lie. It just wasn't what I expected. And it was the first thing I said to Kenneth Feld when I met him, when I was hired. I approached him about it, and he looked at me very coolly and calmly and said, "There's the truth, and then there's circus truth." And that's all he said to me. I said, man, I never forgot that. That was amazing. So
when you, you're 22 years old, I mean, but you've been touring a little bit. You had done the Harlem Boys Choir, which was, I know, a very important part of your life back, in your early days of performing. How did you get into that? How did they, you must have had a great voice. You must have had parents that really wanted to kind of, expose you to that too, right?
My parents were on opposite sides of my singing ambitions. I really didn't have any singing ambitions, to be honest with you. I just wanted to travel. And I so happened to see the Boys Choir of Harlem featured like on a CBS special or something during the Christmas season. I thought it was interesting. My mother, unbeknownst to me, she had her own plans because she actually suggested, she said, well, would you like to audition? I would sing in church and things like that. And she was always telling me, oh, you're a good singer, I would later find out that, really my mother's side of the family, everybody can sing. And like everybody can say, everybody sings. My children till this day, they're always it's just our whole family, my cousins, we talk about it with their children. Like, yeah, they're always just singing. It's a thing with our family, I guess that's just our family tree. Everybody's always singing. My father, on the other hand, who was an immigrant from Trinidad Tobago, wasn't a fan. It wasn't that he didn't think I was capable, but what I learned about immigrants is they don't come to this country for hopes and dreams. And singing is not work. And, he was just like, what are you going to do with that? But he'd support me in his own way. He always picked me up from my international tours. When I would go to college, he helped pay for college. He would drive me up to college and really lecture me about just different possibilities. And, it was always looking at me like, what are you going to do with a degree in do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do? But aside from that, it just was this happy accident. My mother suggested it. We went up to Harlem, did the audition, and I got in, and I was just over the moon. I was 11 years old. I was ready for my plane ticket. And nobody told me, man, this was going to be real work, like real work. For the first 18 months that I was at the Boys Choir of Harlem, I wanted to quit every other Tuesday. And my mother just would not let me. She told me, you're going to finish what you started. And it was miserable. Like I would go to rehearsal after rehearsal, minor concerts I would do here and there around the city, never touring, never doing any major concerts, never doing the full show, always being told, hey, you got potential, but nothing was happening. And suddenly at 13, I was plucked up and told to get ready, go home. I need you to go to Pittsburgh. That's what I was told by the late, great founder and director, Dr. Walter J. Turnbull. And I ran home. I remember just what I packed. I remember I packed a lot of clean underwear. And for food, I just got a column of salty crackers. I basically ran back uptown and got on a bus. And I was just happy as a lark. The interesting thing was, this was a great lesson for me because I was doing the show in Pittsburgh, and the way the show was set up the program was set up at the Boys Choir of Harlem. It was a very lean and dynamic program. And what we would start off with was classical music, then spirituals, then what I would call the easy listening section. So Nat King Cole, George Gershwin, Duke Ellington, stuff like that. And we would have blazers and we'd have light movement. And then the final section was what we called our pop section. And so we would do more contemporary music, and we had real good dances that, along with a wonderful choreographer, we would incorporate the dances of the day, and we had groups and everything. So when you first started in the performance choir that did everything, they would just wing you into the program. So I was supposed to just do the first half of the program, and that's it. And I didn't get through it. All I had to do was stand there in the robe, and I didn't get through it. Literally, I was singing the spiritual, and I kid you not, right hand to the Lord, I was singing Fix Me, Jesus. And I was sweating profusely and I was dizzy, and I wasn't even singing because I mean, by then I was nauseated, and all I could think of, don't faint, because I'd heard the horror stories of other boys who fainted, vomited, all sorts of things. I was like, I'm not going to be a statistic. Anyway, I ended up sitting down on the risers, last song of the whole first half program. And the next day it was a lesson. You know, I was the butt of everyone's joke, but in a nice way. I mean, because, you know, everybody was giving me their stories. Look, man, it's not as easy as you think. And it gave me a real great sense of the world's not after me. There's no conspiracy. Process matters. And those who care about you will put you through that process. And so I always tell parents when I go and do some speaking, I always tell them, let your kid be put somewhere where it's uncomfortable and do not save them. Let them be there, let them go through it, let them know what it's like to be disappointed and to hurt a little bit and to get some scraped knees and to work hard and not get something and just keep at it, because the rewards are just unbelievable. And that's what happened to me. Once I turned 13 and I got on my first tour, it was gravy from then.
You know, Johnathan, it's like you're 13 years old, you're performing with the Harlem Boys Choir, but now you're in a circus arena where you've got 13,000 people in there, maybe. You know, you're performing to over 1 million people a year. Yeah. I mean, and you're the guy. It's not like you're with a group of people too. That must have been quite a epiphany for you.
You know, to be honest with you, the only thing that concerned me was, I think, the amount of shows. So I had been performing a lot. The travel didn't bother me. In fact, I thought the traveling with Ringling was much easier than the traveling I did when I was in boys choir. And, you know, adjusting to being around different types of people and cultures. I'm a native New Yorker, so that was easy. And just really knowing how to acclimate around people, that was all easy. But the amount of shows, adjusting to the different arenas and climates so frequently. And of course, you know, when you're performing with, you know, four-legged mammals, you accept that you are second billing and they are priority. And no matter, you know, I was on everything. I was on every kind of allergy med. You wouldn't believe it. I just had to figure it out because I had to adjust to them. They weren't leaving. So I had to adjust to them. And that was the main challenge, really learning how to be a professional in that setting. And I stumbled a bit. My first year on the Ringling show, the 129th edition, which is my all-time favorite show. And I always wish I did it when I was a bit more mature because the music was so amazing. And the show itself was it was just so gorgeous. I actually missed about 6 weeks of shows. My throat crashed. It was a combination of many things. It was a combination of me running to and fro, trying to be a rock star and a ringmaster. I had some bad habits. Eating late at night. So I was gaining weight. I was, oh my goodness, reflux, you know, caught up with me. I never abused my voice, but I didn't realize that those habits were somewhat abusive to what I was trying to do.
Sure.
And it caught up with me. I ended up in the seat of my ear, nose, and throat specialist out of New York, Jeffrey Levin, and he looked in my throat and he showed me on the monitor, and it was purple and swollen. And he goes, "Okay, I want you to shut up for the next 2 weeks." I said, "Oh, but you know, we have a track. I can lip sync." And he said, No. Close your mouth. You can't do anything." He didn't want me to inhale. And he was right. Fortunately, I got well enough to make it to opening night of Madison Square Garden. And but I was on everything, man. I was on everything to survive that. But it was a lesson for me in professionalism. It was a lesson to me in self-care. And It's also a lesson in the fact that I was quite young. The voice is a muscle and it's always growing, just like the body. And certain things, no matter how talented you are or gifted you are, you have to be mindful because certain things you just can't do. And that's how it goes. I've seen some of my favorite singers engage in things that I just thought were no, and come out and clear the room out. They were amazing. I'll never forget it. One of my favorite singers, this man was smoking cigarettes up until he had to go on stage. I kid you. You saw a stream of smoke following him. And he came I said, that's amazing. I said, I would never be able to, I can't do that. Till even now, no way. But, it was a great learning experience for me. I mean, I think Ringling Brothers gave me this sort of confidence boost in as a performer that you can't get anywhere else. You can't learn it in grad school. You can't learn it in college. You can't learn it. It's just, my brother always said, you go to school to learn, you get into life to get burned. And I think Ringling helped me safely burn myself a few times so that I could really, really understand what I was about as a performer, as a professional, as a singer.
So when you're now this young guy, you're 22, 23 years old, you're traveling by train across the country. You obviously toured around the world, especially with the Harlem Voice Choir, but this is a totally different experience, isn't it? I mean, you're living in this little compartment. You were with the show for a long time, from 1999 until 2017. One of the longest stretches of a ringmaster on any show, and definitely, I think that when you look at the history of ringmasters on the Ringling Circus, you definitely, are somebody who will continue to have historic interest for a long time to come. But when you take a look at that, at that early age, I'm sure you were still, kind of picking up all the tricks of the trade. But I want to fast forward to 2017 because at the end of your experience with Ringling, you were definitely one of the leaders on the show. And I'm sure a lot of people came to you for advice too. You've been there a long time and you were in a key role.
No, absolutely. That's something strangely enough, I picked up somewhat midway through my career. I think when I came back, so I was with Ringling from 98 to 2004. And then I left and made a family and came back in 2009 for the Barnum 200 tour. And it was really instantaneous when I realized, oh my goodness, the ringmaster does not stop being the ringmaster once he goes off behind the curtains. It's not just in the performance. You are really the moral compass of your show. Because of the nature of circus, we live together. We don't just go off into our little holes in the wall, we live together. So people are watching you and they're seeing how you live, not just how you perform. There are a lot of people who are excellent workers, excellent performers, excellent staff members, and quite frankly, aren't the best people. And I realized I didn't have the luxury of being a Jekyll and Hyde. Because
the other thing is, realistically, obviously the circus, it does involve a lot of different cultures, but you were breaking ground too. I mean, you were the first Black ringmaster, and I'm sure that you had other things that you had to live up to that maybe somebody else wouldn't have had to live up to.
Absolutely. When you have that kind of historical weight, and I was fortunate, put it this way, being in the Voice Choir for Harlem, being raised by activists. My family, I come from a family of activists. My grandfather, he escaped the lynching because he was trying to unionize. So I come from that. So I understood what it was. But there was also this part of me that sort of resented it, to be honest with you, because I did not want to be stuck in, well, it's just that. So it forced me to work that much harder at what I did, and so that we could understand that, no, my main goal was to be really good and represent what I wanted to do really well, for the dignity of the role, for the dignity of myself and my family, and of course the show itself, the legacy of the show. That was my hope, and that's what I wanted to get through. I think what relaxed me about the historical ramifications was my grandfather. He came to the show, my grandmother came to the show in Chicago. There's nothing better than seeing your grandparents turn into 8-year-olds in the middle of a show like Ringling Brothers. I mean, they were kids. And my granddad was very complimentary. He himself was a singer, and he was so kind. And he said the most chilling thing to me. He said, he said, Johnny boy, he said, I once upon a time, I couldn't sit here. And he paused for me and he said, and I'm looking over there and there's my grandboy.
Wow. And
he said, and I mean, that just gave me chills. And I would have encounters like that several times throughout my career. I'll never forget these two wonderful ladies I met in Alabama, and they were ushers. And it was so funny because they kept looking at me the whole time. I was there, they kept looking and smiling. And they were like these proud aunts or something. And the lady came and she said, baby, she said, we can come to this. We can go to state fairs and all that stuff when we were girls. We can do this. And boy, she said, man, and you are good. And it was so sweet. And I mean, when I received things like that, then I understood and I knew. And, also I began to realize how much it mattered to younger people. There was a young lady who worked on Ringling Brothers who came back with students of hers. She left and became a teacher. And she said, I brought these kids specifically to see you. And the things she told me they were saying throughout the whole thing, like she said, there was a kid, he just couldn't, she said, oh my gosh, he looks like me. Oh my goodness. And where is he from? Wait. And she told her my background, and they were enamored. I would meet kids all the time. I adopted parents of, Black kids or whatever. And it was the first time they saw somebody of prominence live, in the position like that. They were screens. This one father, he came to me, he said it was so refreshing because my daughter doesn't get that. He said, and she just kept going, he's brown like me. He's brown like me. So understanding that, I realized that it wasn't about me. And it really, that actually informed my behavior. That informed how I really handled myself, because listen, representation, whether people want to admit it or not, fair or unfair, it matters. People are always watching you. And yeah, I would like to take the mature posture and claim, we're not supposed to, the Charles Barkley of, I'm not your role model. But the reality is, if you have the privilege of a spotlight, you are somebody's role model. And whether you like it or not, because you have the privilege to do what you do. I mean, I've had a privileged life. I actually get to do what God formed me to do for a living. I'm not doing a backup plan somewhere. I'm not doing, I'm actually doing what I was actually designed to do. That's a privilege. And yeah, and I have the honor to, represent for people. Why not?
I kind of want to get into that too. Sort of your career, obviously we are since Ringling, but you were talking about people watching you, and I'm sure you were watching some people too, because this particular lady right here, I think you can see it, who's in the front there. Now that's somebody that you were watching, I think, right? Is that
no,
Priscilla?
no. Oh. I tell you, before
Hi,
I was
Priscilla.
married, no, that's actually Danielle Guimaraes. She was actually there. Now that's the woman.
That's your wife.
It's so funny. Danielle and Priscilla look like sisters. So that
I think they do. Yeah, and I apologize, Priscilla.
No, we laugh about it all the time. They look like sisters. And there's another friend they have who's like very Joycey. They all, if you see a picture of them, they all look like they could be sisters. I was watching Priscilla, and we were watching each other. We met each other on my second tour. It was her first tour. And I joke with her sometimes because I say, I think you're my mail order bride, because during negotiations after Living Carousel, I actually did ask Kenneth Fell about, I said, could you cast is it possible if I had to ask him respectfully, it's not my show, he's Kenneth Fell. But I was asking him about casting more women on the show. Obviously, I'm sure they thought it was about me sowing wild oats. And I will not confirm or deny that. But I had a real honest belief, because my mother always used to say this to me. She said, the woman is the heartbeat of a home. And I always believed that, women can set the mood of any place. And I love the Living Carousel, but it just felt like it was more men than women. And so it was a bit more tight. It was a good show. Everybody got along.
One of the best.
Yeah, but they went and found these wonderful Brazilian dancers, and my wife was actually part of that first class of Brazilian dances. Boy, there was joy, joy, joy. And I saw her from the beginning, and I was shocked how quick we actually fused together. I dated her for maybe 4 or 5 months before we got married. It still shocks me because I was not in that mindset.
2 beautiful children who traveled with you on the circus for a while. And I want to talk about them and what they're up to, because I know a lot of people on this call know who they are too. But here's a picture of a guy who you also spent some time with. He's back there on that elephant. A lot of people can recognize him with Bello Knock and the Elephant Bow, I guess, right?
Yeah, oh, that was a fun tour, and they were wonderful. Working with Bello was just really out of this world. I mean, he's so epically talented. I mean, he's like an Energizer bunny, really. It's like working with a living cartoon. Like, I couldn't believe his ability, his energy. And of course, working with Mark Oliver Gable was wonderful too. And to be quite frank with you, and I sort of regret this, I don't think I fully appreciated Mark Oliver Gable until I came back to the show. I didn't realize how really good Mark was. And obviously, like, the pressure he had, following the GOAT, the greatest. And I think he carried that mantle wonderfully. And it was an honor to work with him. He was always professional, always dynamic, presented well. And I always say he was my first great announcement, because I mean, that's when I really fell in love with the art of announcing. Mark Oliver Gable's name, Mark Oliver Gable. I would do this whole thing, join Bello. Like, Bello was so great because he was so nimble. And he would always have me on my toes, always have me on it. It's just hard when you're working with a comic daredevil clown. You don't know what's going to happen. I should have lost my hair earlier, but he was so nimble and crazy and just fun to work with. And I mean, it was just an absolute honor. It was a lot of fun. And he made it like no day was the same working alongside somebody like that.
Yeah. Obviously, this is with the group there, and y'all are having a pretty good time, it looks like.
Yeah, that was my son when he was mini size, and he was in love with Bello. It was so funny. Bello was very kind to him. I always tell him, you made your circus debut when you were about 3, because Bello invited him onto the floor to do a little gag with him, and he was just, like most kids, he was enamored with Bello. He was just enamored with him, and Bello was very accommodating. And it was great for him. It was great for him, like, to see him in the middle of Madison Square Garden, this little kid with Bello Knock. I thought that was great for him. And who knew he would be working for Ringling Bros only a few years later.
Well, we are right in the middle of Circus History Live. This is our monthly opportunity to talk to those who are kind of making circus history today, or who've been involved in circus history in recent years. It's sponsored each month by the Circus Historical Society. I hope you'll consider joining if you're not already a member. You can find out more about the CHS at circushistory.org. And Johnathan Lee Iverson, who has been a longtime friend of not only those who pay to go up and see the circus, but also people like us who have this interest in the circus that is probably, in some cases, an obsession. I came across a couple of great pictures. These actually are Paul Guthel gave us. That's our good friend Don Covington there. And you can just tell, I mean, you are such a great friend to those of us who are friends of the circus too.
Pardon me. Well, I mean, it's an honor, I think, when anybody would take the time out to patronize what you do. That's first of all. I really feel it's a sacred trust that an artist has with the audience. And for those who take it a little further, where they want to create societies, they want to create fan clubs, if you will. You know, I always enjoyed the circus fans coming when we would have our tri-state area run, and we would have the Sugar Rush weekends, because the timing was perfect. I loved that stuff. It really got us up for the last few shows. I always felt that was just such a wonderful, kind thing, but I just feel it's just a perfect exchange, personally, to have people who take the time out of their day and their schedule to really look in on you. And, you know, it was, I would run into several members who would offer to, you know, hey, if you need a ride here, there, or can we take care of this? You know, I thought, my goodness, what a kind gesture. So I always, anytime I had the time to do anything, I would, because look, at the end of the day, it's the audience that makes you or breaks you. And for people to have that kind of interest in any way, shape, or form. There's a wonderful young artist named Jacob Miller, who's so talented. This guy would just create these beautiful portraits. I actually have one of his portraits of me on my fan page. I just come, just for people to do that, you know, to take the time out to do that. The great Jerry Party Man, we used to call him Jerry Williams, Party Man Jerry Williams out in Baltimore. He was another one, prolific artist. He would come to the show at perfect time, because our run in Baltimore was just brutal. But he would always come at the right time. And he was the most jovial audience member you could ever ask for. And he would come at the right time. We knew he was there because you could hear him. In an arena of like 10,000 people, you could hear Jerry Williams. So, I mean, things like that really just move us. And it moves me, at least. And I feel like I should, you know, at least offer some kind of a salutation to people who take the time to really appreciate what it is we do.
Well, I want to talk a little, you know, we've got so much to talk about and so little time, but I want to talk a little bit about, you know, in early 2017, when you heard that the show was going to be shutting down. I know there'd been a lot of speculation that maybe it would become one show or whatever, but here you are, a real leader among the team. That must have been devastating for a lot of folks, but you kind of had to keep going, right?
You know, I did. It was one of those things where I'd been there before in some way. As you know about the terrible accident that occurred only a couple of years prior with the famous hair hang act, I sort of pulled from that because that was so traumatizing. I had no choice but to be this, I guess, this steady hand for the show. And it's one of the prices, it's the price you pay to be the ringmaster, right? You have to be, you can't break. I knew that instinctively when that accident happened. And I was shattered inside to the point where, you know, I was considering seeing a therapist. I was really shattered, but I couldn't break. I knew everybody, a lot of people around me were really shaken up. Well, the same thing was sort of occurring with the show. When, you know, Kenneth Fell made that announcement in January of 2017, I just instinctively just absorbed it and prepared myself to leave, and just opened myself up to others who I knew were having trouble with that news. And I think because of those years of dealing with different types of drastic changes, accidents, you name it, because that's where you really get your chops as a ringmaster. You're the one they look to be the steady hand. People felt safe coming to me, expressing their concerns, their fears, their ambitions. You know, hey, keep it quiet. I got this job here. I don't want everybody to know, stuff like that. And that was my role during that time. For me personally, to be really transparent, I actually knew it was coming, especially after we let go of the elephants, which was a shock to everyone. I knew it was coming. And you didn't have to be a CFO to see that the numbers weren't adding up. They added up real quick when we said we were leaving, suddenly we were Hamilton. And all of a sudden, you know, we're selling out all over the place. So that was somewhat encouraging because it was interesting because it's like, oh, I guess people have been taking us for granted. And that's what that did for me. I said people, and you can hear people were, and those were the stories I was getting from the public. Oh my goodness, I kept putting this off. I was saying, oh, maybe next year, maybe next year. Everybody kept saying it, maybe next year. And now they were like, now I have to get out to it. And they understood a piece of Americana was not going to be here anymore.
So when you, and you and I have talked a lot about those days, including back in 2017, but when you kind of go backwards, because, and I didn't really time this questioning quite right, maybe, but when you would put together a new show, like let's say that Out of This World show, which was the last one, how much ahead of time would you get the music? You know, how was the planning? I mean, you knew there were going to be certain acts that were going to be coming back, but did you work with the director to pretty much, you know, give you that guidance of the makeup of the show and what you're going to sing and when you practice and all that stuff?
You know, it's interesting. With each show, it always seemed each show was an improvement from the last, the previous way we prepared. You know, that show was really, the preparation was very intense because it was so new. The technology had never been used. We'd never been on ice. There was a lot of coaches. There were a lot of coaches, even vocal coaches, because now we had some of the performers who never recited a line at any point in their lives working with my vocal coach. And as a result, I got a lot of free voice lessons in there. But, you know, there was a lot of coaching. That I remember. There was a lot of coaching. There was a lot of just, you know, world-class preparation, as is the reputation of Feld Entertainment. And so there was partially that hope, okay, maybe this is going to continue, you know, and then there was that other skeptic, you know, going, I don't know how they're going to do it, but it was just a lot more coaching because of the different technology. We all had to play with that, relearn it. Paolo, who was one of my wonderful cohorts, he always dazzled me because he could do anything. And he learned to ice skate for that show. He learned to ice skate, which was incredible to me. I mean, and he learned to ice skate quite well for that show. And it was just an interesting adventure putting it together. I wish we had something of some kind of documentation, something like a visual documentation of it, because it was an extraordinary process, extraordinary. I mean, they really, you know, they didn't have to do it at all.
Yeah. For those who maybe aren't familiar with what we're talking about there, this was the final tour of Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey. Johnathan was the ringmaster. The show was done on ice. We had acrobats on ice that were there, which really made it unusual. Of course, the traditionalists in many cases, thought that was a little bit unusual. But I got to tell you, I saw the show and I thought it was pretty amazing. Some of the things that these performers were able to do on ice skates, circus acts on ice skates.
Yeah, no, it was really great. And it was just a testament to how Feld has always tried to push the show into a new world. He literally pushed it into Out of This World with a space show.
That was the name of the show, yeah.
Yeah, and looking back at it, it was a really extraordinary show. I had fun doing it. I had fun working with Davis Fasalo. Had fun co-starring with my son and my daughter as his understudy. They really enjoyed doing it. We had a lot of fun. It was great. You know, and I always remind them of that. They're almost grown-ups now. So I always remind them when they're putting things on their resumes or applying for college. My son's applying for colleges now. So I'm like, listen, remember, put this stuff in there. Nobody's lived like you have. They're going to read that and they're going to be blown away. He's had quite the life, and he's barely 18. So it's wonderful to see.
So, you know, after spending as many years as you did with the circus, you had it. Yeah, you had the sawdust in your veins, and Lisa Lewis. I don't know if Lisa's on the call right now, but something came along called Omnium,
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Omnium. I know you're still involved. You're still on the board of directors of Omnium.
Yes, Lisa B. Lewis contacted me in the middle of a pandemic. And it was 2020, and she just told me about this dream she'd been nurturing in her heart for well over a decade, to broaden the big top and to really normalize seeing people in the disabled community really present themselves fully. And it wasn't going to be just focused on that. She really wanted to emphasize diversity because, you know, I kind of, my motto is, you know, diversity is what happens to you. Inclusion is what you choose. And so Omnium chose inclusion. And it wasn't like this tokenized type of thing. She really wanted to have people of various backgrounds, including from the disabled community, not only in front of the curtain, but on our board and on our staff and in our crew, and normalizing us working together. And most of all, even more important, I think, being very innovative in how we serve a broader audience, realizing that, you know, the different challenges certain audience members may have in taking in a show. So how we do our lighting and our sound, and having audio assistance and different spaces for autistic children and things like that, so they could fully experience the show, is a very critical thing that's a part of the Omnium company. We're still really young. We're we're going into our 4th year. And some good things have been happening. We have a touring season coming up. We have a wonderful, wonderful run coming up at the New Victory Theater in New York City this April. Great. So that'll be wonderful. And we're just growing, you know, it's a non-for-profit. So if you feel charitable or you know a company, tell them to join us. We've been blessed to receive certain grants and things of that nature. I'm impressed by the work Lisa B. Lewis has done. Our wonderful board has done. It's wonderful. I get to work with Noé España, who's our artistic director, and his imagination and his optimism is just incredible. I call his family the Incredibles. The Españas are the Incredibles. I can't believe the talent they have. I mean, his wife is like of another world, his children too. And they're so, despite being so epically talented, there's just such wonderful people to work with and be around. So Omnium is coming up, Omnium Circus. It's growing. We have some big things coming up, and I just invite everybody to check it out, support it.
And I know the entire route is probably not totally available now. It's been on the East Coast. It's been on the West Coast. I live in Phoenix. I saw the show here in Phoenix. Where can we see Omnium in 2024? Do you have any towns yet, or?
I would suggest everyone goes to omniumcircus.org okay. Because I definitely know you can see it in New York this coming April. We'll be at the New Victory Theater. Definitely this coming April, but we actually have a major date in February at Capital One Hall that you'll want to check it out there if you're in that area, if you're in the DMV. That's one of the runs we do all the time that has been highly successful. And there are a plethora of other runs that unfortunately I don't know off the top of my head, but again, you can visit omniumcircus.org and you can get all the information there.
Fantastic. You know, during this whole period since your life sort of transitioned from Ringling, you started doing a podcast. Tell us a little bit about that, some of the other things that you're doing, and then we're going to talk about what you're going to be doing in the next few months.
Yeah, you know, that was fun. I need to start it back up, but I created a podcast called Instant to Ring. It was in conjunction with Circus Talk. And it was a lot of fun just to sit down and hear the stories of the various personalities attached to the circus business. Everyone from Jen Bricker-Bauer to Lisa B. Lewis to the great Kenneth Feld, just artists and creatives from this business to really get inside their heads and to really know their process and their stories. It's like hearing the origin stories of your favorite superheroes, and you really get to, I created it to humanize the circus for everyday audiences, to really, to get behind the glamour and the flash and the flight, but to really see them as human beings, as dynamic individuals that they are. And I really, I enjoy doing it. I enjoy a great conversation, hearing their different advocacy, like Shania Stiletto Booth, fantastic hand balancer. She's like a 3-time Hall of Famer in in gymnastics, and to hear her advocacy work for survivors of sexual assault in that arena, it's really eye-opening. And so I think I'm going to restart it again, because I think we need that type of space as the circus community.
Well, about I guess over a year ago now, the real Circus Ring called back to you again, and you got a phone call, I guess, to come out and join the great Circus Vargas too.
Yeah.
Your tour is going to be starting very soon. This recording is being made in mid-January of 2024, but you're going to be heading west pretty soon, right?
Absolutely. I'm actually sitting in front of a wonderful picture taken from my first tour with them. It was Bonjour Paris, and this year it'll be Jubilee. This picture was taken by the great Wednesday Aja. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Circus Vargas, wonderful family show. Run by some fantastic people, beautiful cast. I mean, absolutely beautiful, energetic, very creative, hardworking, lots of fun, barbecues galore. After all, Nelson is Argentinian, so we're going to have a lot of barbecues.
If you are anywhere in the California area in particular, really for most of the year, you may have an opportunity to see Circus Vargas. And like a lot of other shows, there aren't any animals in Circus Vargas anymore. California is a very difficult place for animal acts right now. But wow, what a show you guys have put together.
Unless you have your emotional support pet, then you can.
Just happens to be an elephant, right?
Right, yes. That's what we should do. It's our emotional support animal. No, oh man, it's despite that, I have to say the audience has just been so wonderful. It's really a knockout show. It's really a knockout company, and I'm proud of it. I'm really proud of what we did in my first year, and we're building a new show now, Jubilee. Right now, as we speak, I was actually in conversations with the lyricists for my new songs just maybe an hour ago before I got on. So we're hard at work putting that show together, and you're going to have a good time. It's a world-class show. It's a world-class company. People always say they feel like they're home. They feel like they're home when they're at a Circus Vargas show. So come on out. You're going to have a great time.
You think about, and obviously we have seen a lot of evolution in the circus over the past 10 years or more, but really over the past 10 years. You were very accustomed to going into, a place like Denver or, Detroit and really doing a show, several shows during the course of a weekend, and Ringling's doing it now. 10,000 people will show up. This is a much, much smaller venue. How is that for you as a performer?
It's very intimate, and I actually enjoy it a great deal. It allows me to really get in touch with the audience in a different way. I compare it to being a televangelist. Being in a Ringling show is like being a televangelist in my mega church, and this one is my storefront church. And it's great. I mean, I get to shake the patrons' hands after the show, but they're really different animals, but they're just as effective. Logistically speaking, obviously, it's very different. It's a lot less strenuous, but it's still a lot of hard work. Being under a tent has its advantages because they don't have building codes and all that stuff they have to adhere to. So, you know, the show can run as it does. I like the intimacy. I thought it would bother me a little bit, but it doesn't. Because I've always kind of pushed that, even when I was with Ringling, I would kind of find my way into the audience. And, you know, Vargas gave me that right out the gate. They would actually position me during the show in the audience with announcements. And it's been fun. I like it that way. I also noticed the difference in, I think because Vargas is a smaller show, they're a bit more riskier with regards to the things that they will attempt to acquire or push out from messaging. Like we did this wonderful viral YouTube feature on this great show called Challenge Accepted with Michelle Carre. And of course, I'm in that category now that my parents used to be in, you know, because my kids were like, "You're on that show? Oh my goodness." And I'm like, huh? I didn't know who she was. And I tell you, when I met her, she was wonderful. She was genuine. It's an education watching how influencers really do it, and watching this new form of media. I mean, it's really something else. But one thing I knew, like, you know, when I was on a Ringling show, that probably would have been a bit more challenging to get done because of the massiveness of Ringling Brothers and the legalities around something like that. But it was much different with Vargas. We gave them full access. They were very respectful. And as you saw with that finished product, if you haven't seen it yet, your audience, if you haven't seen it yet, it's called Challenge Accepted. Just go on YouTube, Challenge Accepted with Michelle Carre. It's such a beautiful tribute to the circus. And, you know, things like that are what we're looking to do more of. And I'm sure you've observed it. You're a media man. You've seen it with a lot of different circuses really learning how to take advantage of the social media space and the online space, because that's where everything's going now. That's what's happening. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's a perfect thing for us as a circus community, so we can tell our story the way it should be told, rather than leaving it to, you know, some news person somewhere with their own little sordid agenda.
Yeah, that's true. You know, I've been asking all the questions here at this point, and we've been going for almost an hour. It's just been fascinating. But I'd love for if people are on the call and have a question for Johnathan, just put it into the chat. One gentleman, Daniel, said that he came and saw the show in Petaluma on Memorial Day, or I guess Memorial Day. Loved it. Got a great view of the show from where he was sitting on the front, even waved hi to you. And the entire cast of the show really made it. So, you know, again, I know that we've got, I guess it's Belinda, sorry, everybody's talking now. Belinda DeBelli, who says that she also went to Vargas, and she really enjoyed that whole intimate experience. It's just a different way. I love your, you know, evangelist idea there. Suzanne has a question here. She says, any thoughts that we can look about acts that you can look forward to at the Monte Carlo Circus Festival? I don't know if you've been keeping up with, but I know we've got a couple of friends who are clowns who are going to be over there, right?
Oh, I'm jealous. I want to go to the Monte Carlo. I want to go to Monte Carlo very bad.
You have to learn French, Johnathan, and you can.
I do. I really need to brush up on my French. I'm such a pathetic gringo. I need to get over there. I really do. People are always talking to me about it all the time. I would love to host just one season. You know, I would love to be over there. I've told you about my dreams of Cirque d'Hiver, but Michael's not going anywhere. So what can I do? But I would love to get over there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see. I think we might have a couple of more questions here, real quickly. Were you in?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
Were you in some commercials for the Spectrum? Did you?
Yes, yes, I was.
So Spectrum is I think like a cable TV internet provider down in Florida, and somebody picked you to promote it, right?
Oh, that was great. It was a lot of fun. It was a friend of mine. See, this is why I tell people relationships are everything. The person who cast me for that commercial series used to be a makeup artist at Ringling Brothers. And she ended up opening her own casting company. And she called me directly. And she said, I think this would be good for you. See, and that's what I get for not being a jerk to her. I could have been one of those jerks, and I wasn't, and I got a job.
Well, Don Cowell said he was watching TV, I guess, one time, and saw it come on, and he knew exactly who the guy was who was promoting Spectrum.
Oh, I love doing that.
Might have been when you said, may all your days be Spectrum days. I don't know. But this has been a real delight, Johnathan, to have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about not only your career, what you've done up until now, but the things that you're working on and the things that we can expect to see you in the future on moving forward. This has been Circus History Live. It's our monthly opportunity to get together and talk about circus history from the perspective of those who are making it today. I often say that journalism is the first draft of history, and I think we made a little bit of that today. So I appreciate you joining us. Bruce, I'm going to turn it back over to you now.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Chris, and thank you, Johnathan, for coming on tonight. We really appreciate it. It's been our honor to have you. Also like to thank Anya Norris in the background. She's doing our recording, and Anya is in charge of our social media. She's a trustee at the CHS. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you for attending our programs. This is our 31st program of Circus History Live. Previous recordings are on Circus Historical Society's YouTube channel. If you're not already a member, please consider joining. It's only $60 a year. You get a fabulous journal, our bandwagon journal, which is next issue is coming out very soon. And with that, Johnathan, again, thank you. Good luck in the new season. And Chris and everyone else for coming tonight. Chris, any final thoughts?
See you down the road. And Johnathan, you want to give it to us one more time? May all your days?
Sure. In honor of the great Jack Ryan, may all your days be circus days.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.